Hello?
Hi, Amy. This is Tom. We're just making sure that you're online, so we're going to start the meeting.
Yeah, I'm on the phone, but I can't seem to get in on the Zoom.
Well, we'll just have to live with you being auditory tonight.
That's fine.
Okay. Will you please stand up and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. At this time, would you call the roll, please?
Dr. Davis?
Yep.
Mr. Levinson?
Here.
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Pitton?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. Here.
Okay, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Dr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Pitton?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from November 12th, board retreat minutes, and November 13th, board business meeting minutes, unless, and then we can discuss it after the second if we need to.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on any of those meeting minutes? Okay, call the vote.
Dr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Pitton?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, we have a recognition that we'd like to award. John?
John.
Oh. We don't usually go to the budget, Spencer. So I'm going to ask one of my favoriteest people in the whole world to come up and join me in this Kathy story. And I'm going to read the script, but then we're going to chat a little bit. Okay? Absolutely. For more than 20 years, Kathy Story distinguished herself as a strong supporter and advocate of District 51's teachers, parents, and students. And over those years, she's campaigning on behalf on bond measures and mill levy measures, served on a whole bunch of committees, and assisted with, they say professional development. A lot of that was cultural training, right? Leadership stuff. The board decided earlier this year that it needed to gather feedback from the community about calendars, and that school calendars, and knew without a doubt that Kathy Stewart was the person to go to. She graciously agreed to do that, and she facilitated 5 community meetings, taking all comers and opinions about the current calendar we're working on. And I'll tell you that the calendar is the worst subject that we ever deal with the board. To take on the public takes a lot of guts and leadership.
I feel like I have the easy part of that job. The steering committee has the hard work.
I'll tell you, I talked to Kathy yesterday, and I thanked her, and she said, "Oh, my job was easy compared to what they're doing," which is probably true.
Yeah.
It was gracious. The topic of school calendar can be controversial, complicated, and difficult. Even knowing this, Kathy willingly accepted to give her time and expertise. Those meetings are going to help us, and have helped us gather the data, and I think we're going to come out with a great calendar solution, and a lot of it's because of Kathy's efforts. So the Board of Education and Superintendent Serco would like to wholeheartedly thank Kathy Story for her continued commitment and support of District 51, and I'll go back to the line where you supported teachers, parents, and students, because that's who you are, and your recent work on these focus groups, and I very much appreciate it. So what we normally do is give you a piece of paper, and this is something that we can. Well, the board bought a gift as well. So I got to tell you, I really got editorialized here. I've known Kathy. I met Kathy when we did a bond issue back in probably 2003, it's 2004, and she predicted stuff better than anybody in the room. But the expertise she brought wasn't just the leadership, the marketing, the politics, and all that. But she was out there in the trenches. She brought the teachers and the accountability committees and the PTAs and the PTOs. And probably the single most important reason that we built the schools we built back in 2004. Then we dipped in and asked Kathy to help us periodically since then with bond and mill levy. And she's been great. We haven't been successful till this last time again. But Angela was smart enough to call Kathy once again and say, I need help with PTA in the school community. So Kathy's one of the finest leaders I know in this community. She's one of the leaders at Hilltop. I appreciate the friendship, but mostly what you do for kids in the school system. So
Thank you so much.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's very nice, Tom. It's
She's
nice
a
to
good
have that
girl.
Editorial piece to it.
She's a good girl.
That's great.
At this point, we have some communication requests to come and address the board. And at this time, we'd ask Mike Bennett to come forward. We'll do it. We'll go ahead. Okay. Hi, Mike.
Hi. Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Mike Bennett. I'm a father of 3, District 51, a board member of the District 51 Foundation, and also the city manager of the city of Fruita. I'm here tonight both as a parent of students and also officially representing our mayor and city council who have asked me to come and make a comment related to an item on the agenda, J2, which is a resolution to proceed with construction of an elementary school in Fruita. And I'd just like to say that on behalf of the city of Fruita, we very much appreciate the board considering this item on your agenda tonight. I and some of the members of the city council and also city staff attended the long-range facility planning committee, or were on that committee, and attended those meetings, and we really appreciate the district holding those meetings, and it was a very long meetings, but they were very important and very productive, and I think we learned a lot, and I think the group, it was a large group involved with that, was able to share a lot of feedback, and it was a fun process to be part of. The data presented by the consultants, district staff, district demographer clearly indicated the pressing need for an additional elementary school in Fruita, which was overwhelmingly supported by the committee, as we saw by the raise of hands of that large group for that item. Fruita is now over 13,000 in population and growing, and just to put that in perspective, less than 8 years ago, only in 2000, we were about half that population, so the community's been growing at a fairly rapid rate for a small community. The city of Fruita is definitely focused on long-term planning and adequately prepared for this growth. We're roughly at half capacity on our major infrastructure for the city, which is a good place to be in as we are experiencing a higher level of growth currently. We will be ensuring our framework for growth into the future in an attempt to reflect the community's desire for maintaining the small town feel, with the realization that we will continue to have growth, but how do we have well-managed growth, and how do we have complementary growth in our community. And so we'll be doing that by updating our framework plan for growth, our community plan during 2019. So it's great timing as we participated with the district in long-term facility planning as well. We appreciate our partnership with District 51, as education is truly a lifeblood to a great community, and we truly value the quality of place in Fruita and the education system that we have. When Rimrock Elementary was constructed as the second elementary school in Fruita, it was essentially almost full pretty quickly. We have a lot of we have a lot of families moving into the community, and we continue to see that with small children children and students in the district. Shelley is slightly under capacity, but we also send students in South Fruita to Loma Elementary. And so, as you see, the capacity issues at Rimrock Elementary and the growing number of families in the community, we do think that this is a very important item to move quickly on. Just for an example of growth, we have approved well over 500 new homes in multiple subdivisions over the last few years, and over 400 of those homes have been approved this year in 2018, and it's not slowing down. We're continuing to see new development requests, speculation, developers coming in, applications continuing to come in, and our staff is staying very busy reviewing those applications and applying those applications to our growth plan so that we manage that growth. We are seeing many young families choose to live in Fruita, and much of our growth includes new students. And we respectfully ask that you approve this item, this resolution tonight, in order to have a new school open as soon as 2020. And we will continue to partner with the district and work toward other capacity issues as next steps at the middle schools and with the high school that are part of and the plan that you're already working on for that long-term plan. And we appreciate that. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to working with you as we address these pressing issues in our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Could we have Jan Kimbrough Miller please come up? Hi.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it was on.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Jan Kimbrough Miller, and I'm a realtor. And I also participated on the long-range planning committee, or the group of community people who will be giving suggestions or recommendations to the school board. And it was really clear in that meeting, again, they were long and involved, which was great. It was really clear how many needs there are all across the district, that there are so many needs, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint and decide what is the most important, because they all are. I have a different perspective as a realtor. I became aware in that meeting, as being the only realtor in there, that I think that generally people think that the demographic of a community or the people in it kind of determine the school, and I think it's really backwards. My perspective is, as I see people moving into the valley and people who are offered great jobs that go through the decision-making process of whether to move to Grand Junction or the valley or not, and businesses that are choosing whether or not to move their business here, the schools are one of the top driving factors. If the schools are not good for their kids, it doesn't matter how great their doctor job is, it doesn't matter how much they're going to get paid or how great our weather is, they are not going to come here. And I hear it time and time again. So I feel like in Fruita, it's really clear that the projected growth in Fruita is going to be so big in the next few years. You can look at the building permits, and the applications for land use, zoning changes, and subdivision development applications, and see that there's going to be a lot in Fruita. And I think that this is one of the chances that we have to anticipate a potential problem and be proactive and prevent a problem, rather than ignoring it now and then looking back in 10 years thinking, why didn't we think about this sooner? We have no place to put these kids, and we have no way for Fruita to grow because people won't come here if the schools aren't adequate. So I just feel like it's an important thing that the district strongly consider that new grade school in Fruita. I think it is really important to the future of Fruita and the future of the valley, and just the economic development of the valley, helping businesses and people choose to relocate here.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize in my haste I amended the agenda for the night. One of the things that we have is, do we have any board reports or anything from CASB you want to share?
That was one of the best CASB conferences I think I've ever been to. The speakers, the breakout sessions. I literally filled a legal pad completely full. So I'm going to sort through that and then try to get by topic different things out to you guys, and you can choose to read it or not. But some of the highlights, Carol Hedges started it off right off the bat. Carol is a economist, expert, one of the organizations that follows public school systems. And she's come over here multiple times to help us. And she just talked about the voter trend, and it really was consistent across both parties, what took place there. And if we pay attention to the trends, it will basically give us a stronger message to try to get better support in our schools. And without going long-winded in all that, we also had a gentleman talk about what we can do in our schools to better develop the brain. There's the neural connection between the middle brain and the frontal brain. And if we do a few things, it will really make a significant difference. I won't go into detail about those either, but we're going to have a chance to broaden it out a little bit. And Dr. Circo is there also. I don't know, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, I think I would just echo really what you had said, in the sense that the speakers were very high quality, very pertinent. Because, you know, sometimes when you hear a speaker, you're not sure it really feels like it fits, but talked a lot about, you know, that really the issues for kids today, because they're so used to instantaneous type response on different things, and ways that we can, as a district, really help students increase their executive functioning skills, that ability to stay on task, you know, really manage their time. So it was fascinating, as well as as you said, the whole BrainWorks piece. And then there was a gentleman who talked a lot about change and strategic planning. And it really, as we're going through the reorg analysis, which we'll talk about in a minute, it was very pertinent to really examining those pieces and parts. So really an excellent conference, and a lot of great sessions, and listening to different districts and some of the things that they're doing. I felt it was very valuable.
And for the audience, CASB stands for Colorado Association of School Boards. So a lot of times we throw out acronyms and people scratch their head and wonder what we're talking about. Anything legislatively that we need to?
Yes, I don't know if this thing's, but I went to the legislative, I'm part of the legislative relations network that's part of CASB. And they're putting together right now, I got some help from the staff in our district and the MBA to gather data on the state and federal and district mandates. And they're putting some bills together as we speak, based on some of that data and others around the state, to try to clean out a lot of the mandates that are not necessary at the state and the federal level both. They're also looking at the windfall tax and trying to remove that. We're one of the only states that penalizes our teachers that have developed Social Security credits towards their retirement, and to remove that, especially since PARA is going to move the withdrawal from paychecks up to 10% coming up here real soon. And then student loan relief, to hire and recruit and retain quality teachers and administrators. They're looking at trying to pull back on the mandates that have reduced and made it more difficult to get loan relief. So that's just a tidbit. I mean, really, the action hasn't started yet. So, but those are things that I know are going to be on the plate.
Thanks, Paul. Any other comments?
I just want to comment on the calendar committee, and then I've been doing this board work for 5 years, and I've never seen as hard-working and as an entrenched group of people in all my life, and it's citizen-led. A lot of times we have committees that are district-led, but it's led by co-chaired by a couple of citizens out there, parents and community members, and then we got a bunch of staff and teachers that are engaged. And they're meeting every week. I mean, it's not like they're meeting every month and and hard issues, and digging into all kinds of, doing research and getting testimony and evidence from other districts and from parents, and they're doing surveys. I've not seen anything like it or anything close to like it, and I think this board's going to have some real choices to make when they come back, and it's going to probably involve spending some money about not only days but early start time, about chopped up weeks and early release and all that. But if any of you have a chance to go sit in one of those meetings, or I went to a couple I missed this week, I'm going to go next week. It's hard work. It's been gratifying to watch, quite honestly.
Well, and I think from sitting back and watching it, I think it's really interesting because it's really the first time as a board that we've involved the community in this kind of decision or recommendation work. In the past, the calendar's been an internal process where basically we come to a meeting, and as a board we pretty much approve and then just hand down the calendar to the community and parents. And so I'm glad that we broke with tradition, that we've involved people in the process, and I really want to say great job to the committee, because they have done a good job of reaching out to different sectors across the community, students, teachers, business owners, community people, recreation people, to get input into what's going to be best for our students in the calendar. The one thing that we know, though, is it's being done in the spirit of compromise, because even in the work with the committee, often people have strong opinions on one thing or the other. And what we do know is that we're going to, in order to have a calendar that we can come forward as a board and have the choices, that they're going to have to collaborate and come up with choices that they can bring forward. So I really want to recognize that spirit of collaboration and compromise that's taking place on those committees, because sometimes that's really difficult work. I guess at this time we'll go into the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'm having a little trouble figuring it. Can you hear me? Is that on? Okay. It says red, so it seems like it's off, but then it seems like it's echoing.
Go.
What's that?
That's go, not stop.
Oh, that's go. Okay. But I wanted to first, what we want to do, the board has charged me with making sure that at the beginning of each board meeting, we will do a reorganization analysis update so that people are aware of what's happening. Just a reminder that when I became interim superintendent of schools in October, the first thing I was charged with was really putting together a team and really looking at a comprehensive analysis of the reorganization, and really looking at all aspects of that. We've been talking to different employee groups and really looking to make sure that we are able to answer all the different questions, looking at the different questions that we're getting from the community, so that we can come back to the Board of Education with a report and some recommendations of the information that we find. And we do recognize that some of the people who are helping us with the analysis are people who were part of the reorganization. So we do have a third-party person, and Nikki Joestra is our head of human resources. As we had a hard time finding a third-party person to help us. That one would not be, drive up more expenses, but also would be knowledgeable enough to really take a look at it from the perspective of looking at org structures of comparable sized districts, looking at the salary range, the job descriptions, and Nikki was able to create an opportunity with Employers Council Mountain States, which does a lot of business as well as education. So we felt that would also help us with credibility across all factions of the community because of their expertise. So what we'll be doing is looking carefully at all of the information, going through the questions and concerns we've heard, both from the board as well as different community members and employee groups across the system. And we will continue to work on this and bring back recommendations to the board. We're hoping end of January. A lot depends on our group in terms of all the data, but at the very latest, early February.
Thank you.
The next piece, we'd like to ask Mr. Phil Onofrio, our Chief Operations Officer, to come forward with a bond update. Because we do have several school presentations, we'll really ask him for just a quick summary. And Eric, are you going to join him? Because you guys are doing such a great job of overseeing. And so really, we'll focus mainly on questions and any questions the board may have and just some general updates.
This was sent to us by John Potter from Blythe, so we'll go through this quickly tonight. Over the summer, we committed $32.6 million of our $67 million. Okay, we spent $23.4 million through November.
A little bit louder, Phil, so the people in the back can hear you.
Okay, we spent $23.4 million of our money through November. Okay, what we did for the summer projects in 2008 is we picked the larger and the easier projects. We were trying to beat inflation with the aggressive schedule, and we only had about 6 or 8 months to get these planned and going, so we didn't have time to deal with some of the complications. We did save about $4 million, which we've set aside in case there's overages in the upcoming projects. We had all local contractors. We had all local designers except one, and he was from Glenwood Springs.
I've got
Okay.
all the way up.
We've completed the parking lot at Fruita Monument. The 2 gyms, one at Dia and one at Palisade, are up. Dia is expected to be available in mid-January, and Palisade should be available for use in mid-February. They're beautiful, massive, very impressive when you get inside. For the summer of 19, we are doing the smaller projects and the ones that are messier that may have asbestos and abatement issues. We're doing a lot of flooring, roofs, fire alarms, concrete, HVAC systems. We have 26 schools of $16 million in construction value. 6 of those design contracts have been signed. We have 2 more to go. And we have designs kicked off at 17 schools with 4 more to go. We're going to bid these in February. We're trying to get on the contractors' books early so that we're able to get the best possible prices. Construction will start the moment school is out, and we're going to be finished in early August. Okay, these are some pictures, as you can see. Dia is nearing completion, and the parking lot is all done in Fruita, nicely striped. Angela was telling us about, Angela Christensen was telling us about her daughter who gets to sleep in 15 minutes later because now she doesn't have to park blocks away and walk to school. Anyway, here's the inside of Palisade Gym. I think it'll be big enough. You have anything to add?
No, I just to clarify one thing on the local contractors. Those were all local general contractors. We did have some specialty subcontractors that came from out of our valley, but they were all managed through local generals. So,
Does the board have any questions?
No, just one quick question on Orchard Mesa Middle School replacement. We're on schedule and
on schedule,
no surprises.
Under budget. This week they're supposed to have the masons start to build walls, and steel will follow that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all the great work that's being done. At this time, we'd like to ask Mr. Mike Nelson to come forward with the summary of the audit report. And Ms. Vi Crawford, will you be joining us?
Mr. Mike Nelson, he is our auditor. He's been with us for a long time. He's very knowledgeable of our district. And Samuel Pugh and Ashley John, these are our accountants. So they've been working very closely with Mike, and yay, we have a budget. You have one, each one have one in front of you. We have an audit.
If I get to the point of actually opening this document, that's well over, let's see, what are we at now? 133 pages. We'd be here all night. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to go over some of the things that we found as the auditors, areas that we felt were done very well, and that mostly just the highlights. There wasn't anything I can say that we've had concerns with. I guess that's probably the best thing to say up front, is that mostly we're just talking about the highlights that happened in your June 30, 2018 financial statement. So I'd like to thank Vi and all of the finance staff. It's a larger finance staff than most of the smaller school districts we deal with. And it's necessary because there's a lot that goes on in District 51, and a lot went on this last year. So I'd like to thank the staff for that. The GFOA certificate, you did receive it again for the 17 financial statements. And it's my understanding that these financial statements will be sent in for the GFOA certificate for the 18 audit also. One of the interesting things about that, there's not a lot of people that do it, even nationwide, but it gives you an extra little bit of viability, I guess. I saw in the newspaper where you were able to get some pretty high rankings on your debt, and a lot of that's because of things like the GFOA certificate that helps. There is in here a management's discussion and analysis, and that is management telling you and the community what they felt the highlights were, and that's in the financial statement document. All of our opinions, which is the only part that's ours, are the opinions, were what are considered unmodified or clean opinions. We didn't have any issues. The standards were being met in following the rules and standards that are required for these financial statements. There are various reports, but there's our opinion. There's 2 federal reports. Just kind of for information, you were at $14.8 million in federal dollars 2 years or last year. For the audit, it was 14.7, so it stayed pretty static. Not a lot of change there. And the audit, or the program we had to look at this year based on our rotation, was the child nutrition program, so that's the program we looked at. And then, again, they have a thing called Auditor's Integrity Report, and as I've mentioned before, it has absolutely nothing to do with the auditor, so that's what CDE has chosen to call it. But it is that report that CDE looks at and says, is the information here that's very, very summarized agreed to the financial statements that have been prepared? And they do. So that's also in there. There was no non-compliance in the single audit area. You did spend $15 million on capital assets from the bond proceeds through June 30. There's a lot more to go. You have another $128 million in that fund that's still available, and I think Phil just referred to some of that. The government-wide statements, those are the ones that are supposed to make you look more like a business because they bring in capital assets, they bring in all of your debt that don't live in the funds. You're very familiar with the para issues. Your para liability went from $727 million to $786 million. This was the year that the Healthcare Trust Fund also was required to be included now, and that ended up being for you $17.9 million. So you have over $1 billion in liabilities now on those set of books. Samuel and I were discussing that earlier today, and that's a very impressive number. On the wrong side. Yeah, going on the wrong side of the ledger. Which drives the loss or the negative net position that you have. I just want, overall the impact of the pension and OPEB related changes was $138 million to your income statement on that basis. You had a negative $128 million total impact. Take out the $138 million, you can see that you had a $10 million positive impact if you take out the para things that have to be included right now. So just kind of use that for some comparability of where you really are. Then if we look at the debt, you added $2.1 million in capital lease debt, and then $143 million with the GO bonds and the premium. Your debt was paid as required. Next year's GO debt will require about $17 million payment. And right now you have $14.7 million in that fund to do that with. So that's without bringing in another dollar. So you're well in line to be able to make your debt payments without any issues. You experienced a decrease of 21 students on over 22,000. That's negligible. And it'll vary. That's that 22,084 was the October count, and it was 22, whatever 21 was, more than 22,084. So not much change in the number of students. Your total revenues increased $12 million in the general fund. $6.4 million of that was from the new mill levy override. So that's and that's actually shown in a separate schedule now in the financial statements, so that people can go in and say, okay, what did we do with that override? So that's in there.
Where'd the other $6 million come from?
Hasn't been spent yet. Oh, the other $6 million? $2 million came in additional specific ownership tax. So more people bought cars and boats and trailers, and that's where that comes from. And then another $3 million from the state equalization. So that's most of all of the increase, the $12 million. Your total expenditures increased $8.3 million, and those were over all categories. There wasn't any one area where you could say, oh, we had a lot more in instruction, or we had a lot more in support, or a lot more in business services. It was spread, that $8 million was spread through all of your services that the district provides. The general fund itself had an increase in fund balance of $4.1 million. Again, most of that was because of the mill levy override that hasn't been spent yet. And that $4.1 million compares to $43,000 the year before, so that was a pretty significant increase. The general fund balance is now at $13.8 million. If I remember correctly, I believe the board's goal is to have 6% of expenditures in reserve. So with that $13.8 million, you're at 8.2% of expenditures. So you've exceeded your goal right now. All funds met the state budgetary constraints, and the fund level statements are all in a favorable financial position. That's my report. I know you haven't had the financials to go through very much yet, but if you do have questions.
We're handed out, so.
Yeah.
Just generally, tell me the process you go through to audit and how many people and how long it takes, and I don't want you to dwell in detail. I just want kind
of an overview.
Community to know that I guess the detail and how deep you dive and what your team looks like and stuff. So
we use 5 people on the audit, 5 on an interim week, usually sometime in June, where we spend the week during that time, do a lot of our single audit work during that time, single audit work being looking at the federal dollars. And then we have those same 5 people come in for another week in September usually? September. Yeah, in September usually, and spend another week there. And then we spend a lot of time in the office going through it, reviewing it, making sure it's in order. It also gives the school district staff time to put together all of the individual funds. So that's about what it takes to do it. And the process, we look at internal controls. We try and rely on the controls that are in place so that we don't have to test an overabundance of transactions. But we do pick risk areas and say, here, we're going to, like this year, you issued new debt, so we spent a lot more time in the debt area. You had some capital leases, making sure that those got on the books properly. So again, a debt area. Property, plant, and equipment, again, is a huge part of what you do. We had to spend a lot of time in the pension area again, and the GASB 75, GASB being Governmental Accounting Standards Board, 75 being the other post-employee benefits, which is what added that $17.9 million to your books. We have to spend a lot of time making sure we get the calculations proper in that area too.
Yeah, Mike, you mentioned the secondary look, and I can't remember where we're going to submit it again. The GFO.
Oh yeah, it's the Government Finance Officers Association,
GFO. And
GFOA.
That's something we've done in the past.
Yeah, this is your 19th year.
So what does that involve, Vi? I mean, when we go through that process?
We send Association, they have people that look through it and make sure that we're following all their guidelines, and there is a list of what is required in them. And then they say yay or nay, that we did a good job or we didn't, but for 19 years we've
Passed, yeah.
to receive that award.
Good.
It's about a 50-page checklist they go through. It's pretty extensive, and they usually have two people that go through it. So that sometimes one with more expertise in one area and some with a. We have a person in Grand Junction, Rex Ricks, who used to be on the review board. He doesn't do it anymore, but since he's retired. But yeah, so if there's anybody in town that wants to do it, they love having reviewers. But it's quite a process.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Is that appropriate,
Yeah,
John?
I'm not sure everybody understands what an audit entails and how long it
Yeah.
entails and the number of people and where you dig and why you dig there and things
Yeah.
like that. So
Thank you.
we have every confidence in the financial department here, but it's nice to hear you confirm that.
Thank you.
Right. And bye, Melanie, and the rest of your department. Thank you again. You guys do a great job.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And as Melanie's walking up to join Ms. Crawford, then I want to just, really do thank, as John and Tom said, it really is a unbelievable thing to get ready for an audit. That's no small task, so we appreciate you all for all the work that goes into getting that ready and the hard work that creates us staying directly on budget. And so thank you so much. At this time, we'd ask you to go through the mill levy certification.
Sure. So one of the resolutions that we're asking you to approve tonight is the certification of mill levies. This is what sets the property taxes that will be levied and collected. Without approval of this resolution, we wouldn't be able to collect the $73 million in property taxes that are on this resolution. The school district is considered a taxing entity, and as such, by December 15th of each year, this is one of the responsibilities of the Board of Education is to approve this. So each year the mills are set based on the assessed valuation of the properties within our county, and so they're adjusted slightly based on what the valuation of the property is doing. Last year to this year, our property values in Mesa County were pretty close. Of $1.6 billion worth of properties, we saw an increase of $10 million. So if you go through and look at your resolution on the second page, there's a page that compares last year to this year, and you'll see that some of the individual categories within that have adjusted up or down, but overall it's 0.016 less mills than last year because the values have slightly increased.
With the assessed valuation of the property in Mesa County, for every dollar, how much do we contribute locally to every dollar that we spend at the district for education of our students?
That's the math.
I thought at one time it was like 33 cents out of every dollar, but I could be wrong.
Local sources are 68 million out of 176 million in revenue. A good accountant never does math in their head.
Right.
Estimation.
About 38% is local.
So
Almost all the rest of it is state.
So I think that's important for our local community to know that based on the assessed valuation of the property taxes in our own community, we contribute 38 cents of every dollar it takes to educate our students, and 62 cents of every dollar comes from outside our community.
Right. So one of the figures that CDE does provide to us each year is the amount the mill levy would need to be if there wasn't that portion that was funded from the state. And so you can see on here that it would be of the 24.214 that it is for our general fund. Without the state revenue, it would be 106 mills. So they do pick up a big portion of that. Are there any questions on the resolution?
I don't think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'll begin our school improvement plan presentations. So I guess we'll ask if we'd like Clifton Elementary to come forward first.
Yes.
Thank you.
Was it all three? Excuse me, all three schools are coming up at the same time. So Clifton, East Middle, and Mount Garfield Middle. And just a reminder for our audience, the Unified Improvement Plan process and the School Improvement Plan process requires that schools that are in a priority improvement or turnaround status do their presentation to the Board of Education. So that's why not all schools are presenting. We did hear this morning, yesterday afternoon late, that the request for reconsideration for Pear Park was approved by the state, so they're no longer in turnaround status, but then move into that priority improvement status. So we no longer have any schools in that turnaround status, so that's pretty exciting. And so we thank them for the work of doing that request for reconsideration. So I'll turn this over to you, and Dan, and are you going to be our MC?
Sure. Sure. Well, once again, as we did back in November, we've got 3 schools that will present their improvement plans. In the past, it's been multiple slides and a lot of data, and we've done quite a bit of work around really keeping it simple. We just ask that if you have questions, kind of write those questions down throughout the process, and then our principals will be available after all 3 presentations to answer those questions for you. So we'll get started with Clifton Elementary and Principal Yogi Chirp.
Hi, thank you, Board of Education. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be able to address on behalf of Clifton Elementary. I want you to know I'm extremely proud to be the principal of Clifton Elementary, and we have a very dedicated, committed, talented staff at Clifton Elementary, and I'm certainly proud of them and the work they do, and we definitely have a sense of urgency, but it's balanced and measured, and so I'd like to thank them behind me. So good job. And it's important to know that it's a team effort. It's a work that we all do with all our staff at Clifton Elementary, and that's part of the work you'll see tonight and what we talked about and so forth. So we'll kind of talk about the body of evidence at this point in time. And so I have some data, and we just looked at it. It was a mean scale score. This would be achievement data behind us, and so there's a 2014 15 year point, 2015-16 and 2016-17, and then this 2017, which is a pretty significant drop. We had it trending up. We wore performance last year, and that was a celebration, but certainly we need to work on some things in order to get our scores back up in that area. So we had that for both math and ELA, so there's a piece of data that we were looking at and trends, and that's important in our work. Also, this is what we'll call the growth report. So we had achievement. It's certainly important to look at growth over time. We've got your language arts and math, and where we fell out in terms of the school of 2018. You can see 2016, 2017 was the blue, and then we've ended up, having a decrease for this last year. And it does talk about all the demographic areas, and so we've looked at that in terms of gender and all the other pieces to kind of go some cohort data and what does that look like and the trends that we see within that. So talked about achievement and growth data at this point in time. We certainly want to be over the 50th percentile. That would be a typical average year of growth. And so we've got some work, and we're focused hard on that. This here, and I just did one grade level, but we've looked at this data, and these are standards that they have through CMAS that we got back from the state, and it talks about the state and the district and our school, and we've used this to use in our planning with teachers and our coaches when we do half-day plannings each quarter, and we look at this data and what are the drivers and the essential standards that we need to focus on to leverage improvement in our scores. And so there are certain standards that would be important in this data, and not all of them, depending on where we scored out, but the coaches, admin, and the teachers look at this and say what are the standards we need to leverage within that context. that's some of the body of evidence in terms of scores and data and where we fell out in language arts and math. So we looked at major improvement strategies. So obviously we need to increase our ELA math growth achievement in that area. We're going to address core instruction utilizing vertical and team planning and lessons to include non-negotiables. So what is it we need to strengthen? Green zone instruction, what is non-negotiable? What should every classroom look like? How are we strengthening those areas? When we go in, how do peers and teachers work together and know that everything is happening the same in every classroom? And those are certainly important. So we have end-of-year goals. 100% of all teachers will implement instructional non-negotiables through walkthroughs. Late LCs, this is certainly linked to district initiatives as well. Learning Forward is certainly a catalyst in terms of things that we've learned and embedded in our schools throughout the last few years. And we think that that's super important to have that LC continuum be a vital part of what we do at Clifton Elementary. And they'll be evaluating themselves as well, and again, identifying gaps when teams meet and what are those interventions that we need to put in place. And that's major improvement strategy number one. The second one, again, is around math and growth achievement, utilizing the power standards or essential standards to hone in on what are those areas that kids need to know and be able to do related to the standards for the state of Colorado. And then we have some of those end-of-year goals, again, connected to the guided reading continuum to strengthen teacher practice. We don't want to have to start all over or do something brand new. What is the district already doing? What do we see value in? And what are we going to do to drive our school with coaches in planning? And this certainly aligns to some of that. Using the UCIA investigations, workshop for all, certainly part of the teaching and learning frameworks is certainly important that classroom teachers are focused on what does a workshop model look like when in the classroom for good core green zone instruction. So that's Clifton Elementary's presentation for data and some improvement strategies. Thank you very much.
Yogi, were these new growth areas, or are these things that you visited in the past, or are these?
Yeah, some might have been visited in the past that we just need to strengthen, but certainly getting guided reading in place and strengthening workshop model through the teaching learning framework. Some of those core things we've done a lot of PD around to really have what does that look like. And so a little bit LC continuum or LCs have been a part, again, strengthening those. So some of that's not new work, but some of it is in terms of where we're at and what we need to strengthen.
With the reorganization, I assume that you have a coach in your building.
Actually, we do, and they're both here tonight. So, I'd like to thank, actually we have two.
How does their role with the reorganization fit and support the work that you're going
to
do?
Yeah, it's vital. They're in classrooms. We certainly have used the cognitive coaching model, and they support teachers in their half-day plannings. They go in and they meet with them in LCs. They go in and where are we at in implementing and embedding the guided reading continuum. So they're really a support for these teachers, coaching them, setting goals with them, having conversations. And then we, as admin, also loop in and we want to strengthen and look at that. They look at the guided reading continuum as where are teachers at within that continuum, and that's certainly valuable because it's immediate support to those teachers, immediate feedback. A lot of teachers right now are actually, and we're really proud of this, using the swivel to videotape a lesson, and then they will look at it and debrief with the coach, with a teammate. I've gotten some videos that I look at that I'm able to go in and provide feedback or reflect on that and have conversations with teachers. So it's very valuable to have these coaches. It's probably the best use of money I've seen in a long time because it's immediate and it's in the building. Very responsive.
I had just to piggyback on that, a chance to come in and actually observe Emily with her interaction in the classes and talk to a number of the staff. And the school culture out there, I was very impressed with it. So from what I was seeing, I would say I've got the impression you're going to see some major growth coming out of that.
Yeah, thank you. And that's our focus is we want achievement for sure. Their kids are on grade level, but we got to get those growth scores moving in the right direction that will leverage some of the achievement as well. And so we're working hard on that, and thank you for coming in. And again, I'm super proud of our staff, and we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Timothy Pfeiffer and Larry Pageant from East Middle School.
I know there's a handheld mic there. I think it works. Might have to turn on the bottom.
Oh, you have to turn it on. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Timothy Pfeiffer, and I have two really important people to me up here, as well as a group of folks sitting in back that are my left hand, right hand, and left leg, right leg people through our school. So would you guys stand up in the back? These are members of our instructional focus team and our school instruction team. Let's give them a hand for all the work that they do. Also have Larry Paget. He's literally my big right-hand man. Has recently set a world record in bench press. So, yeah. He's the guy that you want when you're doing discipline. Yep, exactly. And Paula Cooper, who we stole from another school this year and is our teacher librarian and collaborator extraordinaire throughout our school. So, yeah, thank you everyone for being here. So,
yeah. You kicking me out of my job?
Almost. I got it, I think. Come on, Dan. Yeah, it's not working. Okay, just go. Yeah, exactly. Like many things in our school, we're kind of trying to remarket and redesign ourselves a little bit. So that's our new Cheetah that we brought on last year, and we've redesigned some of our school too, just to try to motivate and bring our culture at our school a little closer between students and staff. What you're going to see in this first slide is some significant achievement trends in our data across 3 years, 2016 up in the top left corner, 2017 right hand in the very bottom, most recent school performance framework data that we have around achievement here. What you can see up in that left-hand corner is far more green and yellow. As you continue to move through our school performance data, our achievement data since 2016, what you see is more red. And although we're getting close to Christmas, we'd love to see a lot more green up there. And that's not really what's happening. What we see in our English language arts, our math, and our science in achievement scores over a three-year period of time, we've had additional subgroups of EMS's students declining in their English language achievement. Our math scores have stagnated. So we're not happy with that, but certainly it's not as concerning for us as our English language arts and our science achievement in 8th grade, which is also declining at this point. These are slides, again, from 2016, 17, and 18 that shows some significant growth trends in our data. Once again, a lot of yellow and red and a growing number of red up there where our students are not meeting the expectations for growth, at 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. What we've seen is over the last 3 years, increasing numbers of subpopulations, our English language learners, our low socioeconomic free and reduced lunch students, our minority students, and our students with disabilities continuing to decline in their growth rate, which is highly concerning for us. We certainly are concerned about our growth across our whole school. But in those subcategories, we know that we need to really pinpoint our instructional focus on those students because we know that as they grow, our student achievement will also grow and those kids will become more invested in our school. We talked about that culture in our school and some redesign of that. We want to make sure that those kids are feeling like they belong at our school and that they're happy and successful. We have 3 major improvement strategies and some action steps within each of those. All 3 of them align with our school district's major improvement strategies, which is nice to be able to dovetail and line up there. It makes it a lot easier for us to get support from the people who come in and guide us at our school. So our first major improvement strategy is to strengthen our professional learning communities, often called LCs, so that we can be much more informed about student data to improve our instruction and our instructional support for students. Within that, we have three major action steps. Really, all staff across all subject areas, we're going to really mandate that they are focused on English language arts instruction, reading and writing across all subjects, including physical education, social studies, science, wherever those kids are at, we want them to have intentional and focused reading and writing opportunities. And those opportunities are going to be designed in our PLCs across all subject areas. And I know Mr. Paget can talk more about DeFore and their work and how we're going to be using DeFore's 4 essential questions to guide our processes in those PLCs. Last year in our school improvement plan, we also focused on professional learning communities, and we're just trying to get a little bit more laser focused on exactly what happens within those learning communities to improve that process. One of the ways that Mr. Paget and I know that we need to help is to be there, to be a part of those conversations. So right now, we have a major focus on hacking our schedule for second semester so that we can actually be in those PLCs and those MTSS meetings much more frequently. So we're making some minor changes in our schedule for next year or for the second semester so that we can be there to help ensure fidelity and accountability to the expectations that we have in there. And just to also be those instructional leaders to help have those conversations with our staff members. We're also really trying to ensure in our upcoming master schedule for next year that we are taking the necessary steps to include every single person that needs to be a part of those conversations in those PLCs. Our current schedule really does not allow for our support staff in ELL, special education, for those teachers to be a part of those conversations. They just have different planning times when those PLCs occur, and so our focus is to make sure that those support staff members can actually be there because we know that they're the experts that can then continue to build the strength of our instructional staff, our general education staff. Our second major improvement strategy is to develop and enhance systematic practices within the teaching and learning framework for our first and best instructional practices. So really we're talking about that PLC process. Again, our first and our second major improvement strategies really dovetail so much. We know that backwards by design, understanding where our kids need to be and how we're going to know that, what we're going to do if they are there, and what we're going to do if they're not. That's a major part of those PLC processes. During that time, we also want to increase our ability to impact students through Workshop for All, using that model of learning, that understanding by design or backwards by design, and then also improving our ability to assess students using our standard-based grading model. We're looking forward to the possibility of our district really rethinking the way we report out to all parents through a standard-based model, because right now we use standard-based grading, yet it's difficult to communicate that out in our report cards. So we're working with our district on that. We're going to be focusing in on one or two elements of the workshop model to make sure that we're getting really good at some small steps, going slow to go fast, and then that last action step there, instructional programming, making sure that we have aligned our resources. As I was talking about earlier, those ELL staff members, special education staff members, and making sure that our schedule is aligned and that the resources that we have are aligned with our first best instruction. And then our last major improvement strategy is to address academic and the social emotional learning growth of our subgroup populations that we've talked about. Free and reduced lunch, or those low socioeconomic students, our minority students, our students with disabilities, and those English language learners. So we definitely need to use our PLC process to be able to shoot our students to the stars, but when they fail to get to the stars, we need to have a net to catch them, and that's the MTSS process to ensure that approximately 20% of our students, we have really solid secondary and tertiary kind of instructional practices to meet their needs as well. Second action step in there is to identify and advocate for professional learning. I honestly believe that a lot of that professional learning can happen right within our school. The answer is in our school building with our ELL and special education team to be able to support our general education teachers, and then a massive kind of endeavor that we're going to be heading on over the next 3 to 5 years is to design a master schedule that looks much more like a competency-based schedule. So our hope is that in 3 to 5 years, you may walk into East Middle School and see students learning together and not really understand where students are at as far as being a 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader, but really meeting their needs at where they're presenting to us each day. So those are the major action steps and improvement strategies that East Middle has.
Tim, at East Middle School having two distinct populations with a challenge school embedded in your building and then your neighborhood school, do you see the growth and achievement trends exist in both subgroups of your population?
We are, yes. We're seeing growth and achievement across our school being a concern. It's better in our challenge program, but it's still not where we want it to be. So yes, this is a school-wide process and problem for us.
I'd like to hear your thoughts about the benefit or maybe a perceived need for an alternative education model for maybe middle school age kids. And not all of them, but some of them, and whether it's an R5 or a school within a school or what. If you could give me some thoughts about what you think and if that would help across the population in both growth and achievement.
Yeah, I'd be glad to tell you what my opinion is on that. I'm a firm believer in alternative education, and the mainstream meets most of our kids' needs, but we have a pretty good chunk of our students that could benefit from some alternate educational options for them. As R5 Career Center, those opportunities to get our kids physically hands-on engaged and to learn in a different manner than what the mainstream students engage in, I think would be a big benefit to our school district. I can honestly also say that one of my dreams for East Middle School is that the way our challenge students learn, they do benefit from having many of those same opportunities. And I'm a firm believer in allowing and in promoting our other students to have those same opportunities. What is great for clustering of our gifted and talented students, I believe that there's evidence to show that that clustering of students, such as what would occur in more of an alternative middle school, could be a big benefit to not only East Middle School, but to our whole school district.
Just have a quick
Larry identified that you're trying to make a real effort to be in the classrooms more and those kinds of things, correct? Excuse me. And this isn't specific to you, but just maybe to Diana or Scott, but one thing that struck me in school visits that we did this fall was I was expecting to hear a lot from our teachers about workload and all those kinds of things, but I was stunned to see the level from our administrators. I'm not picking on you two by any means, but across the schools I visited, and I suspect it's true among others, that our administrators are deluged, infringed upon by whoever, upper ups, I guess, that take them away from doing the job they need to do in the building. So I don't know if that you find that as a problem, but I can say in the visits that came out pretty clear. And so when you mention that, I hope that not just in your case, but in all of our principal cases, that there's sensitivity to allowing them to be in the building, do their job, be with their staff, as opposed to running around doing whatever. That the sense I got from many principals, if not all, was that they are pulled routinely for, I'm sure, important things, but not more important than what, like, you two gentlemen are striving to, and I hate to have that hindered. I hope it isn't, because it's hard enough to do that on a regular day without being pulled away for other things. So anyway, that's more a comment at a district level that not just for our schools that are, have these plans, but I suspect in many of our schools. So anyway, just comment. I don't know what you think about you've been hearing things too, I suspect. Not new to the system here.
Well, I think that, like, for instance, this afternoon we met for about 2 hours on looking at a couple different, what would be different ideas around an alternative middle school model and what types of things you could do to provide some relief, both for those students who need an alternative style of learning, as well as, like you said, the schools. Because I think as you look at what's going on and what's being identified here, there's a great deal of work that goes into identifying the root causes of issues, those performance challenges, those major improvement strategies, and then those action steps. And you see the results of the careful and thoughtful consideration. So I think that same careful, thoughtful consideration really needs to go into, and we've begun that process. Actually, even today, as I said, we spent 2 hours
I've no
looking
doubt
at
that's
how can we help
building leaders are not pulled from that work they're trying to do. I would
agree.
Work that probably, you see what I'm getting at is.
Oh, you bet.
Anyway,
and I think just
does that
as
make
we
sense
know,
what I was trying to get at?
Yeah. Like for instance, R5 is a very successful example of what can happen when you match learner need with environment. And I think that's what we're looking at, is matching learner need and student needs with an environment that's really differentiated and specialized to meet those needs. So I agree completely, and I think the board was really clear in those comments that came out from staff about the need for us to really explore alternative options for our middle schoolers. So we're really actively in the process of doing that. So I think, the board, as you know, spent a great deal of time going building by building. So I think that's just an example of a need that came up again and again. So we've begun that process. So hopefully we'll have, like I said, some options, because I think, as has been clearly demonstrated and explained, one size has never fit all, and it never will continue to fit all. So I think we want to make sure we have alternative options for our children.
I'll just, East Middle School got a lot of recognition with their Yay student that went all the way to the Nationals and won that thing on the pillowcase that flips over. So, there's good things happening there. Challenge program, these kids doing different things. And are you guys a MESA program also at your school?
Yes.
You've got a lot of smaller but good programs that are academic oriented and options for them. So
we feel very proud of East Middle School and the Challenge program, and we see that as a model for ways that we could continue to do business by providing kids those experiences that take them outside of the four walls of our building. And I think if we can give that to all kids, It'd be an incredible experience.
You bet. Yeah.
Hey, Mount Garfield time. Am I on? Do I have to hold it?
He gets.
Now we're on. Okay.
MC it though.
Do you want an introduction there, Mike? Oh, yes. So, no. Our last and final presentation tonight, we've got Mount Garfield Middle School. We have Principal Mike Haase along with Nikki Johnston here to go through their presentation.
Thanks. I was a little ready to get started. I'm Mike Haase, Principal of Mount Garfield. This is Nikki Johnston, Assistant Principal. Danielle is at our choir concert tonight. We do have a couple Gator staff in the back that can wave. And I know the rest of them are excited to watch online. So we'll talk about the good things that's going on at Mount Garfield. First, a little nuts and bolts. As you know, we are a priority improvement school. Our score was 36.1, and I just wanted to show where we are. We're actually closer to the lower level than we are to the next level, but we're working to get to that next level. Academic achievement is where we're lagging behind. We are 6.8% away from being approaching. Academic growth, we are actually approaching. So we're doing real good work in academic growth, and I think that says a lot about what our teachers have been doing at Mount Garfield for years. And there's where we compare to the state as far as academic growth goes. We're kind of in line. We're real close to getting there to where the state average is. And the next slide shows that we are in line with what the district does. As the district grows, so do we. We kind of stay within a few percentage points in both ELA and math. Academic achievement is the area where we're struggling, which is the next slide. That's where we're lagging behind in the state, is academic achievement, and that's where we do not meet standard. We do not have academic growth, or we're not approaching. And Yogi talked about this slide, and I'm going to touch on it when we talk about our major improvement strategies. And we have this graph for every content area and every grade level. And what's important about that, as Yogi discussed, is you can identify the standards where we are lagging behind, where we're deficient, and one of our improvement strategies will be using backwards by design to where we unpack those standards and make sure we're focusing on those standards to where we can catch up. This is the big data, the trends that we notice. Last year there was over 1,000 discipline referrals that were entered for Mount Garfield. That means 1,000 different times kids were outside of classroom not receiving instruction, and that's just what was entered. Our TLCC data shows that the staff feels that our rules are not, the kids don't understand the rules. Student behavior is not enforced in a consistent manner. And even 50% of our staff last year thought that Mount Garfield's not a safe place for students to learn. So we thought, as far as improvement strategies goes, the most important thing is to improve on campus culture and climate. And those are the root causes. Campus culture and lack of consistency with discipline, and then lack of common understanding and alignment with standards. We need to make sure we're teaching what the state standards are. A large amount of teacher turnover and admin turnover. We're a completely new admin team, and we have 25% new staff this year. And then a root cause, which is every principal is going to say, is class sizes. Our class sizes are about 30 in small rooms. So our major improvement strategies, it's twofold. One, attacking the campus and culture. The district was good enough to line us up with engaging schools. So we've used engaging schools to implement a common language around discipline, a common language around restorative practice, rebuilding those relationships. We have what's called the 5 R's now. Instead of just sending the kid to the office, they have to be reminded, redirected, then they reflect to where they want to re-enter the classroom, and then they would reset to the office. So it's a common language campus-wide to where the students understand and the teachers understand, instead of just straight to the office and missing classroom instruction. We developed 5 big rules to where it's common language, and it's important for 6th grade. They understand it'll be the same language all the way through their 8th grade year. Our advisory class, Nikki's doing a rock star job of developing those SEL lessons wrapped around those new five R's or the big rules or the campus expectations to where we teach it and reteach it. You can't just think kids are going to understand it because they're in middle school age. And in advisory class, have that true one-to-one conferencing with student and teacher to where they monitor that student's academic progress. So the academic area where we're doing major improvement strategies is the backwards by design that Timothy was talking about as well, where you actually look at those standards where you're deficient in, find out why you're deficient in those standards, and teach those standards. Using Schoology as a way to communicate with students and parents on their progress and standards-based grading. And our teachers are really embraced and are rocking Schoology this year. The best thing that the reorganization, I think, being an outsider moving here, is the instructional coaches. Our instructional coaches are doing a great work providing professional development around workshop model and Schoology with our staff weekly. So the instructional coaches are a big piece that's going to help us. Our learning communities, we have our LCs meet by content weekly and by grade level weekly. And what they're doing is developing common assessments, examining student data to see where we need to improve, and sharing of effective practices. And finally, since I raced through this a little bit, is we've partnered with Riverside Education Center, who is working with 50-plus students every afternoon in enrichment activities, both academically and social-emotionally.
How long have you been doing that with rec?
Since the start, but it was a slow burn. We started with 5 or 6, and now there's 50-plus kids in there daily. And it just started this year. And the big piece is they were able to get buses for us. And so the transportation piece, because we're not a walkable school.
I think that culture is important.
I think it's the most important piece of improving that school. And I was hoping Mr. Williams would ask me the question about alternative.
I'm going to ask the same question. I would like to hear both of your opinions as leaders of a middle school about an alternative education opportunity for kids that could really thrive in just a different learning environment. And I toy with an R5 for middle school, but I'd like to hear about school in school or some other strategies or thoughts you might have. I don't have a specific question. I just want to hear from you. So
Sure. And Dr. Serco said, our system's built years and years ago. It's not fit for every kid. Every kid's not going to fit into the system that we have. And being from Texas, honestly, I was shocked when I got here and there was no alternative education for a middle schooler. My first question is, so we OSS a kid for misbehavior? And that's part of the campus culture because teachers they have discipline issues, they have class disruption, or they're cussed out. And all we can do is OSS a kid, maybe expel a kid, but how's that helping that student? There's no alternative education piece for that. So I was honestly, I was kind of shocked because in 10 years in administration in Texas, I didn't OSS kids unless they are a danger to themselves or the school immediately. But what I did is I found an alternative place for that student for 5, 10, 15, 20 days to where they were still getting the reading and writing arithmetic. They weren't falling behind because OSS, to be honest with you, that's a vacation for the kids that get OSS. And then they fall behind 3 days of classwork, and then they show back up, and they're 3 days behind. So whether it's a school in a school or somewhere where they can keep up with their academics but still not be a classroom disruption.
Yeah, that was the message I heard when I visited with your staff.
Yes, sir.
Clear. I think your staff really wants to look at some possibility. And I heard school within a school in that conversation that day, and I also heard of an alternative.
I think both would be great options. I mean, school within a school, you've got to find the space.
Do you have the space?
We don't have the space.
Can you find the space?
We can find the space.
You got to find
might have to borrow a modular,
Yeah.
and we have to find a staff member.
And Nikki, I guess I've known you for a long time. I'd like to hear your thoughts. You're new out there this year too, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we have middle school is kind of the age of accountability, and this is when these kids are learning to be accountable for their actions. And there's not enough time in a day for a teacher to teach them content and that accountability part. And some kids need the accountability part more than they need the content. And so it would be nice for them to have an area that they could go to that would support those soft skills that they need, those how to work in a group, how to work through conflict, all of those skills that they need in order to be successful learners that they just don't have yet. And that's our job in the middle school, is to help build those and to help, facilitate them as whole learners. There's just a lot in trying to get done in a little bit of time. So just a place for them to go. We're doing the 5 R's, and part of the 5 R's, the third step is reflection, really thinking about what the behavior was, how it affected the class, how it affected my teacher, and really having that reflection and really thinking cognitively about, what am I doing? Is it helping? Is it not helping? And so those are the skills that a lot of these kids are missing, that we just haven't gotten the right fit yet to in order to teach them those.
Yeah, my sense is we don't have a long period of time to start solving this problem. I don't think we. In my school visits, I went to 3 different middle schools, and I can tell you, the story was very similar in 3 middle schools that aren't necessarily similar schools, and I just think it's an urgent need we need to pay some attention to for kids.
Yes.
And do it the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, along those lines, I don't want it to look like we're giving up on that kid by placing them at an alternative education program. If anything, we're throwing that kid a lifeline to keep him engaged in school. So it's not us turning our back.
A whole bunch of kids just don't learn in a traditional way.
No.
Thrive in some other setting. I mean, R5's a really good example of that. So I'm not at all convinced what the solution is. I just don't think we can twiddle our thumbs and think about it very long. I think it's an action.
A big piece of that is the classroom, because if you remove the disruption of the classroom, then the teachers are able to teach. And then the other 29 kids are benefiting from that.
Yeah, but at the same time, we
Right.
got to pay attention to the kids that need the alternative.
Right.
Too.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for any of the principals up here?
Thousands. Yeah, thank you for coming tonight. It's always a pleasure to sit and listen to what's happening in schools, because that's really our business and that's what we should be focused on. And thank you for taking the time to do that.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Next, we'd like to invite Mrs. Kathy Ebel to talk to us about summer school plan and funding discussion.
John, loading this. You doing it for me? I've got summer school. John, not totally inept, just slightly inept.
30 kids in a class is going to. Is it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
After the superintendent's report, we'll take a short break.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to take.
No, go ahead and finish your report.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. Nah, let's do this.
I'm trying to shorten the PowerPoints, by the way, everybody.
Good evening.
We still have.
Hey, Kathy, how you
And
doing?
don't worry, it's a short PowerPoint and a short conversation.
I just want to know what ELO stands for. When you get that acronym, I'll be just fine.
Extended learning opportunities.
Oh, good.
There used to
Yeah.
be a band in the 80s. Yeah.
Pardon me?
Wasn't there a band in the ELO?
Yeah, Electric Light Orchestra. Whoop, whoop. Yeah.
I haven't learned much in a few years, so.
So, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. It's this time of year that we want to come and talk with you about summer extended learning opportunities, ask for your support. We are very early in the planning process because we obviously need to start with the first step of asking for your support. So I'll just blaze through these really quickly. Hopefully they look a little bit familiar to you because this is the same format, even the same PowerPoint background that we used last year and some of the same slides. I'd like you to remember that the process for summer extended learning is twofold. We really want to support our young learners who need some additional time to be the variable, but we also want to support our teachers who are getting really down and dirty with the D51 learning model with professional learning and support coaching throughout. So it really is attacking from both sides, supporting teacher learning and student learning as well. This is really, really preliminary thinking around what a schedule would look like. Last year, if you remember, we did 5 weeks of 4 days a week. This year, we want to do 4 weeks of 5 days a week. And that's because we feel like families really need that time. Want to condense it a little bit so they have more of a summer, they have more opportunity for family time together. So we want to go 2 weeks prior to the 4th of July week, 2 weeks after, give them the 4th of July week off again. The way we've structured the daily schedule is so that there is 5 days of instruction, 4 hours a day, lunch served, free of charge to all of our students, an opportunity for enrichment 3 days a week, and then planning time for our teachers and professional learning for our teachers throughout the week embedded to be able to look at data, make instructional decisions for the following week, and then everybody gets to go home at 1 on Friday. So that's our initial thinking, again, real early in the process. Hopefully no principals will be shocked by this slide. We have not had direct contact with all of these principals, but this again is initial thinking about sites we would hopefully utilize. Dos Rios and Chatfield and Nisley and Rimrock and Bookcliff we used last year as sites, and they were very successful. Dos Rios, Mount Garfield, and Bookcliff are in partnership with Riverside Education Center for 21st Century Learning Centers grants, and they have to have summer programming, so we're hoping we can just pair those things together. K4, absolutely a literacy focus, the same curriculum we used last year, the Lit Camp. Highly successful. The kids really, really liked the Lit Camp process. The teachers really enjoyed it. We had good success. SEL is very embedded. They do lots of their work around 7 strengths, which are SEL kinds of focuses. So we will be using that again. This year it's going to be great. We'll have spring data and fall data that will happen, so we won't have to take instructional time to do assessment. We'll know where kids are coming in and then do the progress monitoring, running records, conferencing throughout, and then in the fall we'll be able to see those results. We will be working directly with Sally Huddle to ensure that we're collecting the proper data so that she can do a good, solid program evaluation. We were a little late to the dance last year, so we didn't get her involved until afterwards. So she will really guide that process of what we need to be looking at and collecting. Purposeful professional learning again, prior to the implementation of the summer school program, weekly LCs, and then embedded coaching cycles for growth producing feedback. Integration of ESY and Migrant. I actually heard back from Trey, and it looks like Migrant's going to do something a little different this year. But we're hoping to further integrate ESY, which is extended school year. Those are for students who have an IEP, that in their IEP it says they need to have summer programming as well. So we want to have them as integrated into the summer ELO as we can. We think that's beneficial for everybody. And so having talks and discussion with the special ed department to see how that would best work for all learners and how we can make that happen. Budget implication. This is what we wanted to talk about, huh? So summer extended learning 2018, it cost approximately, and having that number doesn't feel approximate, feels pretty precise, but approximately $1,160 per student for 20 instructional days and 6 professional learning and data collection days. 2019, we think that we should be able to decrease costs because we did purchase curriculum. You know, a startup always costs more money than to continue it. We also we wanted classroom ratios to be 1 to 10 for optimal learning. And we staffed them at 1 to 10, and we didn't think about the fact that lots of those kids don't show up. So we had some smaller class sizes. So we will staff at 1 to 15 this year. Fairly certain it'll land at about a 1 to 10 ratio. That should save some money. Working with Vi and Diane in the finance office, and READ Act dollars were utilized last year for our K through 3 learners and will be again this year. And so what we're asking for is your support and your permission to use general fund dollars to fund our 4 through 8 students. And that's all I got, but happy to answer any questions or have any further discussion.
How many students do you anticipate?
So
4 through 8?
We figure it'll be about 2/3 to 1/3. 2/3 K through 3, 4. We put the 5th graders at the middle school for the purpose of getting some middle school transition time. So we figure that'll be about 1/3 of our population, about 2/3 will be.
I guess just budgetarily, or how many total students?
So that's up to you. I will educate as many kids as you want to pay for, but.
How many you think, well, what's the demand? I mean, there's not
so,
unlimited,
okay.
but how many?
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
You did this on the fly last
We did.
year, and if I remember, it was wildly successful. How many more kids can you expect if you go out and spend some time recruiting? And then I'd also like to know about teacher participation. I know it was kind of hard at the last minute to find, they jumped in, but I suspect it'll be easier this year. So I'd like to hear them both.
It should be. So we did do everything on the fly last year. It was very last minute. We did have some trouble recruiting adults and actually ended up really being limited in the number of students we could invite based on the number of adults we could hire. So we don't expect that to happen this year, primarily because we're going a whole lot sooner. The other thing is, I'm fairly certain we had a long run with summer school, and then it went away for a long time. And I'm not sure people wanted to get back engaged, wondering whether we were going to be back again this year, but I think they will. Word of mouth has been, and it's been advertised that it was very successful. I believe that teachers want to participate in this. So I think that we would like to, with your permission, double our population. We had just a little over 500 kids. We'd like to serve 1,000. And we think that will be easily filled.
So if we want 1,000 kids at $1,000, we're talking some serious money.
Yes, but we do have READ Act funds that they have committed.
2/3 of it's READ Act, so it'll be.
Not 2/3, because READ Act can serve K through 3 Vi.
Okay, excuse me.
I'm $1 million.
I'm sorry, it's only through 3rd grade.
READ Act can do through 3rd grade. So it would be the 4 through 8. Vi, you want to come up here?
Yeah, I guess that's my question, because, are we looking at $1 million, or, what are we looking at?
So do we have the, Vi to give us the dollar amount?
Last year, we spent over 500,000 on the 500.
619 or something.
Students. We had a little under 200,000 that came from READ Act.
Okay, so 300,000 was the, so.
So 400,000.
That's a little more palatable than $1 million.
And I believe from what Diane Rain sent to me, we have more READ Act dollars this year. So that should be less impact on the general fund, because we will focus more on the younger students, get them proficient by 3rd grade, so that we're not continuing to do this.
So if you draw 1,000 kids, are the facilities going to be adequate for those kids, and expanding those facilities to other places in the valley, or?
So, yeah. So certainly there is space. We looked at that to do the sites that we've chosen. We are hoping to, there is a 7th site on our list, and that's one more site than there was last year. However, lots of our sites were quite small. We do have sites all across the valley so that transportation isn't as big an issue as it was last year.
How was it an issue last year?
Transportation?
Yeah.
Well, it just gives us, we spread out more, and we had, I guess transportation.
Just the distance you were transporting.
Yeah, we were transferring kids. And actually, our middle schoolers were hoping to bring West Valley into West Middle School because we weren't able to get capacity at Fruita 8-9 to be able to do the free lunch service through the Federal Food Nutrition. So we're going to bring those folks in, but we'll still maintain our elementary site out in Fruita. But we have them across the valley so that we don't have to have kids transported as far, I guess was my...
If we have some of our extended school year children in there, won't special education dollars be able to pay for those students for their summer program?
Absolutely.
They have their own.
Yeah, we are not funding the ESY. We did, you did fund a couple instructional assistants last year that allowed our students in the ESY program to stay for enrichment, which was kind of our first start at integrating the two programs together. So that was the only dollars that we spent on special education only identified learners.
So maybe down the road you could get back to Diana so we could kind of know what we'd be looking at cost-wise.
Rough math, it looks like $600,000 if it cost you $300,000 last year for out of 5, and it's going to cost $1 million, and
I think that would be a maximum because we have a little more of the READ Act funds this year, and we have a more concerted effort and focus around the younger learners. So I think that you can consider that a max. We do have a fairly reasonable breakdown already of what last year looked like that can just be extrapolated to increased numbers, and happy to get that out.
Yeah, just get that so we know.
Did you follow any of these kids about what a difference it made this year to have spent 4 weeks in school in the summer? I mean, is there any way to...
So anecdotally, we've gotten feedback from principals and teachers saying that they could tell the kids who had been in summer extended learning, and also kids talking about their experiences. We did do our best to go back after the fact and flag those kids in the system so that we can watch their growth throughout this year and do some comparisons with last year, and Sally Ottle is helping us with
So we'll start to track that data a little bit better as we...
And we should be able to get some data from last year's students this year, just probably not as complete a picture as we'd hoped.
That would be nice for us to hear as well. You know, and then as you work with Sally to more formalize the assessment and the follow-up piece, that would be good.
Well, you know, what's great is you have that, as, you know, Kathy talked about, you have that end-of-year assessment and then the fall one. And, you know, when a student is behind on their reading level, they can slide as much as 6 months if they're out of the learning cycle for 3 months. So I think, you know, what we'll hope to see is, you know, not that slide, but actually a student gaining instead of losing during that time. So that's, you know, really, and that's the big kind of plus of summer school is you seldom see that slide. In fact, like I said, the opposite. And we should see that, they maintain that. So instead of taking part of the year to get back to where they were at the end of the year previously, they're beginning with a leg up from the very beginning, you know, from the start of the school year.
So I got a question, and I don't want this to sound ignorant, but aren't a number of the kids free and reduced lunch? And then if there's surplus Title I money, can that legally be used on the
It actually can in
kids
some
that qualify
cases.
for it in summer school?
It depends on how much we've already allocated because that grant is written before. So we'd have to really look in and look at that and see. And if we, you know, I mean, I do think summer school is an excellent idea, and it's like I said, you get a lot of bang for your buck in that. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we'll take a look at our title grants and see, but that certainly is an option.
Okay.
I think it would have to be the next, he's telling me to put my microphone on.
Oh.
Hello? Come on over. I think it would have to be next year's summer school because this year's title funds have already been, of course, distributed, so. we would.
They don't go far enough either, so.
No, then they don't go far enough either. Lee could probably address title better than I. But.
Well, I mean, I will clarify in the number for replan. We do have quite a bit more than last year. We have $607,000 in replan this year to spend on the summer school, which is quite a big difference from the year before. So you might be actually looking at less when you think about general fund. And that can only be K-3, but that is where we are focusing the biggest chunk of that. So we have that $607,000 dedicated some to materials, which we have to spend less this year, mostly to personnel costs, which is where your largest expense goes. So I think you'll actually be looking at a little bit less costs. And we have a summer school planning meeting coming up in the next few days, where we're going to work to really target exactly the population of students that we're really directing summer school at. That will give us, I think, a little bit better number to be able to come back and say, then really what's the difference between replan and what we may need to look at for general fund.
All right, thanks, Lee.
Yeah, I think, from just my own view, I think you go build it for $1,000 and let us know what you think it's going to cost in advance, and we'll send Vi and Phil out on the hunt for some money.
Aside from the district doing these sites and district management, is there, and I brought this up before, it fell on deaf ears, I suppose, but is there a consideration, and maybe there isn't anybody advocating for this, but individual school sites or combined school sites where they can come up with an intervention program for the summer for their own kids? In other words, what I'm getting at is if Loma, for instance, you're not going to drag Loma kids you may, to Shelley. Well, you may, but it may be better if they were served in their home school, is what I'm getting at. If that's an option budgetarily or interest. I don't know if there's any schools have an interest, if it was presented to them, if they could generate, an intervention summer school-like program in their sites. I don't know if that's ever been looked at or not.
Based on
in conjunction with this. Does that make sense?
Sure. Well, I think certainly looking at all those, I think there may be an economy of scale piece around, clustering kids at certain sites. But like you said, all those options can be examined as you're all looking. But the more satellite sites you do, then you end up with a site administrator, and so then it runs your other costs up. Particularly it would depend on how many students at Loma. If you had a large percentage, then you would save on transportation costs. But I believe that because of the magnet model that we're kind of needing to use.
No, and I get that. I didn't know if that was even something that was entertained or looked at.
The other thing is, because we are very much focused on supporting teachers as well in the D51 learning model, the teaching learning framework, workshop model, we have the ability to have coaching cycles and support when we have a site leader, when we have larger numbers of teachers at grade level that can act as an LC and look at data and do those kinds of things.
Well, that's the beauty of this. It's kind of simultaneous learning. You have the students learning, and you have the staff learning.
Right, and I think if you do smaller sites at each school, you're likely to have one teacher per grade.
And again, I'm not saying that in lieu of. I'm saying in addition to. If you threw out, and I'm just saying you don't have to do anything, but if you threw that out as an option, maybe there'd be some takers that would be something to look at, a creative option, not in place of this. I think you're absolutely right with the goal and the mission, what you're after. I'm just saying there may be those cases, rare that they may be, but that may at least send a message that we're looking at all options. We have a lot of needs for our kids, and there may be some other ones than the traditional hub site. We bus kids there. I'm not saying that's not a good option, but there may be some other ones too. I don't know if that's looked at or entertained. And if it's not, that's fine.
I mean,
throwing it out.
Like you said, look at it. A lot would depend on the number of students.
Sure.
Yeah, you bet.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Nice to see you, Kath.
Nice to see you too. Careful while I trip.
Don't trip.
Sorry.
At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Lee Grasso and Mrs. Heather O'Brien up to share with us the staff perception data report.
different.
Musical chairs, do we need to kind of
You be careful driving the canyon. Take care.
Here we go.
That's a really nice story.
That's what she was talking about.
She's a Castile for Gateway.
Oh, really?
The teacher.
I don't know.
And she
Seems like it wasn't working.
You want a full screen and all that?
No, this review.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Motion to have the resolution ratified to the board. I think that's, no, I think he's moving forward to do it.
And where's she?
We haven't even seen a resolution yet, have we?
I think he may.
You want us to start?
She got an hour drive.
He'll maybe bring it.
She got an hour drive.
Basically,
after she
just-
leaves.
Okay, take it away,
Okay,
Heather and
all right.
Lane.
So Heather and I are here this evening to talk about the staff perception data, the tools that we use to collect staff perception data throughout the school year. And ironically, it was really interesting to listen to the school presentations up here earlier because they talked a lot about the importance of climate and culture and the impact that has on student achievement and growth, whether you're talking student to student, student to teacher, teacher and administrator. And really what we're here to talk tonight about is the staff perception data tools that we have in place in our district and the impact they have on us being able to collect data and make impacts on culture, which we know has a direct correlation to student achievement and growth data. So Heather and I are going to talk about a couple different tools that we're using today, and I think this first slide really just lays the importance of understanding your school climate. Oftentimes we talk a lot about data in relationship to state assessment data or testing data. The data that we collect from staff perception tools, we believe, has as much impact on anything and our ability to close those gaps. So here's just a couple things that evidence shows in terms of the importance of school climate and therefore the importance of collecting that data. Research shows that it does have direct correlation to achievement and closing achievement gaps. Definitely decreasing teacher turnover and teacher satisfaction, which we know has a relationship to the overall climate and culture in our buildings. Increasing attendance, whether you're talking about students and staff. So all really viable and important tools. And we're really here tonight to build awareness of the three tools. I think a couple of them you have maybe some general awareness of. Really not to go into too in-depth tonight into each tool, because you'll have access to really going into that data at a much more in-depth level if you wish. You want to say anything more about this piece of it? Yeah. So we've been working with staff this year to really help them understand really all three of those staff perception tools. The OHI, the Organizational Health Inventory, which I think as a board you're probably most familiar with because we've been using that in our system for a while to collect information about the organizational health. TLCC, which Heather's going to talk about, that is the newest version of the TEL surveys, which you may be familiar with, and then our Learning Forward, our Standards Assessment Inventory. We're going to talk about each of those and then really spend some time really towards the end talking about how some of those really relate to one another and how our principals are using that data and our teachers are using that data. So the first one that I think you're probably most aware of is the Organizational Health Inventory. And we've collected data about organizational health, OHI, for, I was trying to track back how many years, maybe 10 plus, maybe 15. And so it is a tool that we're familiar with in the district. If you have not utilized OHI information, these are the domains that we collect information on. So it helps leaders understand how staff are feeling about goal focus in their building, whether morale is high, what the level of cohesiveness is, how much autonomy is, whether or not we're being adaptive to change, and all of those. And that data comes back by school, comes back by district level. We can actually compare data from elementary, middle, and high. So it does provide important information around our organizational health. OHI does come with a consultant, and so Marvin Fairman has been our consultant in the past and has helped our principals understand their OHI data. We also have years of longitudinal data, which helps us kind of determine, where buildings have been and where they're going. And it is familiar to most staff because it has been in our system for a while. And so we continue to use OHI data. Recently, what we did with staff this year when we got our OHI data, our TLCC and our standards assessment inventory, we really worked with staff to help them triangulate that data, not look at them in terms of how they are as separate pieces, but how they really, each one of them kind of bring up common themes. And so the data tool protocol that we took staff through this year was really helping them understand how all three of them are related and how they can pull really important data from all three of them when they are looking at the climate and culture of their building.
So I've been asked to speak about the TLCC survey, which was formerly known as the TEL survey. We have that data from 2015. It was a result of House Bill 1384, and multiple entities came together, such as CEA, CASE, CASB, to produce this survey. It's one that teachers really respond very well to. So in order to unlock the data, each building has to reach a 50% participation threshold. And we had all of our ARs talking with everyone in their building. It's not just MVEA members who can take the survey, it's every educator in every building. But we had every single one of our schools in our district reach that 50% threshold. And overall, our participation was almost 80%, which was one of the highest in the state. We got a lot of accolades from CEA. So I think that speaks volumes not only to MVEA's communication pipeline and being able to activate people, but also to how much teachers value this survey. And there are two key reasons why they value them. Number one is understandability. These are the categories or domains, if you will, that are within this survey. And each one of these topics you can look at and you can understand readily what it means. Whereas the OHI, if you haven't been through the OHI training, you may not know what optimal power equalization means. You may not know what problem-solving adequacy means. But the layman can read both the domains or the categories within TLCC and also the questions in TLCC and really glean a lot of information. The other reason that teachers really value it is the transparency. I would say most of our building principals are good about sharing their OHI data. They're supposed to. Some of them share all of the OHI data, all 10 domains. Some only share the two lowest areas that they're supposed to write some goals on. And in some buildings, OHI data hasn't been seen in a number of years. Also, the OHI data exists in a binder on a principal's shelf. So if the principal did present the information, but a teacher had questions later, they'd have to go to that binder and look it up. TLCC is available to anyone online, and I'm going to show you how to access it. TLCCsurvey.org. Bada boom, bada bing. It's going to work, right, John? You said it was going to work.
It's on here.
It's on here. How do I?
You
Come
gotta
on. Do I have to exit out of this?
No, I'm kidding you. You're following me for your tech. You're in trouble. Where's the link at?
Well, it's in the
She
PowerPoint.
clicked on the link and it came up there, but it didn't come up there.
So do I have to exit out of the?
Yeah, let's try that. There we go.
Yeah, me being all techno.
Working? Just when you
No.
need technology.
It's been one of the greatest bangs.
Stand by. I'm going to figure this out.
Technology never works.
So while she's pulling that up, you can go in and access this data, and so you're able to pull up the district
Why don't you
reports.
send us an email tomorrow?
Okay, I got it. No,
Oh,
I got
it's
it.
right
I got
there.
it.
Yeah,
I got it.
got it.
Okay, so TLCCsurvey.org. You click on the 2018 results, and then you'll go down to Mesa County. And you can open that up and you can see every school and you can go and look at particular schools. I'm just going to show you a few things on our district view. So the domains are over here on the right-hand side. And this is exactly why teachers really appreciate the understandability and the transparency that's here. So for example, the principal, Mike, at Mount Garfield indicated or referenced his TLCC data. Now, this is the whole district's. This isn't just Mount Garfield's. But because teachers can look at this, if a bunch of teachers think, well, we might have a problem with discipline in our building, they can go look it up and they can see, oh, our lowest area, like Mike referred to, is rules for student behavior are enforced in a consistent manner. So teachers can now think, okay, do we have a discipline matrix? Do we have minor and major offenses delineated? Do we have clear consequences for each of those minor and major offenses? And the teachers can really drive that conversation. That's the value of the TLCC. It's not just in a binder on a principal's shelf somewhere. The teachers are open, and the data is open to the teachers so that they can own it, and they can also help drive some of the solutions. Leadership as well can also access this information. I've been harping at y'all about workload for 4 years. Here's the TLC, the district data. Do teachers have adequate time to prepare for instruction? Is their time protected from duties that take away from teaching? Do they have adequate time to analyze and respond to student assessment data? Do they have adequate time to support their students' emotional, social, motor learning?
The numbers in the little brown box are percentages.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is for the whole district.
This is for the whole district.
So you could look at school to school and find out that in one school across the board they don't feel like they have enough time, and in another school they feel like their planning time or personal time is protected through the culture or leadership.
Yeah, and I would say, having looked at all of the buildings, time is always going to be the lowest one on all of them. Teachers are never going to feel like they have enough time. But, I mean, as I've been saying, that my perception is that workload is an issue, and here we have 38% of our teachers feel that new initiatives are not given enough time to demonstrate their effectiveness. So this is the relevance of the TLCC data, is I have access to it. I don't have to go to the superintendent's office and ask, can I see the OHI data, and then start extrapolating. It empowers educators to know and own their data and start bringing solutions to the table. So I know that...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Now, with the OHI, that represents entire staff. The TLCC, is that just our teachers, or is that support staff as well?
It's
just teachers.
Just teachers. So is there a
I
way,
think it's just
which again, they're
educators.
both going to have important information you can glean. Is there a way, and I know what you're saying about the OHI, is there a way to make OHI as accessible to people as
My
this?
understanding, and we're going to visit with Marvin next
Okay.
week. My understanding is his son Jeff has done a lot to bring it online and available for people. They're moving it to a digital format and availability, but I can't answer.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
But that
I
would,
think one of the powerful things about TLCC is that you are able to see the question that was asked. Because right now, and you know, and again, it sounds like they may be making some adjustments to it. But right now, if you look at a category, a health inventory piece in OHI, whether you're looking at innovativeness or problem-solving adequacy, there's a general definition of that, and you are given some problem-solving pieces to help you kind of work through that as a staff. But then you don't have necessarily the questions that are related to that help you kind of unlayer it and peel it a little bit more and get down to the detail of it, which is, I think, a really powerful piece of TLCC and SAI, which I'm going to talk about too, is that in each one of those, you can actually see the question that just helps you understand it just a little bit more in depth than you would without seeing that.
Agreed.
So really a partner tool to SAI, to TLCC is the Standards Assessment Inventory. For the last couple years with our leadership, we've been really working on supporting professional learning and how they design professional learning in their buildings to support everything you have to do. I mean, you heard that today in another theme in our work with our principals today was just their focus on learning communities and knowing that one of the important pieces that they have is that teachers have to have time to work together in vertical teams and horizontal teams. They have to have time to look at data, coming back to time. And they have to really have opportunities inside of the school day within their school time to be involved in professional learning. There's all different kinds of professional learning designs. There's in the building, outside the building, online, all those pieces. And so we've been really working with principals the last couple of years to help them really think about their professional learning design in their building and how to best support teachers to improve student growth and achievement. So the standards assessment inventory is a way to really kind of identify specific areas of professional learning in the building to help them design goals around that. So for example, you know, Yogi talked about the importance of learning communities. He's used his SAI data to dig deeper into that to see what his staff is saying about learning communities. That's one of the pieces in there. Just like TLCC, the SAI, you can see the individual questions. There's a set of questions for each one of these categories here. So you can kind of peel it a little bit and decide and look to see what people are really saying about learning communities. Is it that, you know, they don't have any time to spend, or they don't have the right schedule that supports it, or what is it? So you can really start to work through that problem at a site level. The data is accessible right after the assessment window closes. Basically, the principal is given a token to get on and look at their data and share with their staff. It reports it out by school and also by district. It gives you graphs like that, and then you can dig into learning communities or leadership and find out more about that. So here's an example. You get your information back on learning communities. It gives you the questions and how you actually did in relationship to those questions. So for example, on this site, in my school, some of the learning community members include non-staff members such as students, parents, and community members. So this person might look at that and say, wow, we're feeling pretty strong about certain areas in our learning communities, but maybe we're not involving the rest of our school community at the capacity we need to. You know, so that you start to think about your accountability committee and your PTA and your PTO and things like that. The connections, really, some of the same things that Heather mentioned with TLCC. There's transparency. Those terms are really easy to identify with. It's third party, just like TLCC, so it is confidential for staff. It's easy to understand. And there's connections between TLCC and SAI, professional development time, for example. And TLCC relates to the SAI.
Is there a reason why all staff can't see it? It says it goes to the leader, and the school leader has to share it with staff. I mean, is there a reason why we don't make it even more transparent that I can look at it? Or?
All staff can see SAI too. Their platform isn't as easy accessible at TLCC, where it just sends out a web document, anybody can get on and access it. Basically, the principal gets a token, and they share that token with their whole staff, so the staff can get on and look at any and all parts of their TLCC data. I mean, excuse me, their SAI data. Okay. It's just they're two different platforms. One is just a little bit easier to access than others because TLCC has really developed their platform and made it just really easy to access. SAI has to come through a token, just a little bit, one more step in between.
The costs on there are no costs to the district for the TLCC?
That's correct. Currently, the state pays for it every other year.
Same thing.
SAI is a minimal cost. It costs for a whole district to administer it online. It's about $5,000.
Okay. Now the OHI, what does that run us?
I think that's varied on years depending on how many times Marvin has come in and consulted. I think it can range upwards of $50,000. I think has been probably the largest amount that's been spent on it. But I don't have those exact numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that I've seen that number.
We've had 15 years,
Melanie
there'll probably be some type of average cost. Between
30 and 50,000.
45.
So I know
So,
that
but
it's got more zeros
they're all
on the back
measuring.
end of
It looks like, I mean, they're giving you a feel for schools and their sites.
Are these yearly then?
Are those yearly?
SAI is yearly. We were hoping TLCC could be yearly. Right now it is not, but
Every other year the state mandates it. So,
why can't that be?
well, that's one thing that we're asking. Lee's been in conversation with
I mean,
people
it
from
seems to me you
CDE.
got the template and you got the website and you got it all kind of figured out, the hard stuff done.
So I have been in conversation with CDE because we've shown an interest in wanting to do that every year and have that data. And so they had not planned for it to be a yearly thing, but they are working with their board and their constituents to see if it is possible.
They don't do anything else.
CDE and CEA. To see if they could possibly offer it every year, but they have not made any. They've not made any conclusions on that yet. So I'm still in contact with them, and I'm hoping.
Okay.
My recommendation would be is if CDE approves for us to be able to do it every year, that we pay for it every other year and we let the state pay for it every other year. It's kind of a no-brainer for me. If the state doesn't do that, then, could we do, I'm just thinking workload. What can we take off of teachers' plates? Can we do OHI every other year and do the TLCC every other year so that they're not taking 3 perception surveys every
I was just going to ask that question because I know how long the OHI takes to answer it, to think about and answer every question. And in these other 2, just how much teacher time is that going to take? And really, I don't know if you can answer that, but I already...
TLCC I think I took it in under 10 minutes, but I'm a pretty fast reader, so maybe 10 to 15
SAI?
minutes.
SAI is probably 15 minutes.
So then the other thing is there any redundancy between all of these? I mean, you got hundreds of questions there.
I don't think that there's, what I would see the relationship between SAI and TLCC is not redundancy. I think what SAI does is it really kind of takes some of the strands in TLCC and details them out even more. So there's a professional development piece on TLCC, and then there's a specific, the standards in SAI are all professional learning. So it takes that professional development strand in TLCC and unpacks it into all of the layers that you need to have to actually establish a strong professional development program in your building.
It looks like each one has, there's definitely going to be some overlap and some themes, but they all seem to address a separate issue.
I think what's clear in the TLCC, sometimes when you were taking the OHI, you weren't really clear whether you were answering questions about your principal or about central admin. And I know that came up year after year in our building. And the TLCC the questions are much more clearly related to, does your principal do X, Y, Z? Is your building culture X, Y, Z? And then there's a section within the TLCC that administrators answer about their supports from the district level. So you can see what your principals are saying about how they feel supported from the district too. And that's a little bit different than the OHI. So I reached out to a lot of teachers when we started having this conversation, and overwhelmingly the same things kept coming up, that we're not always sure what the OHI means, we're not always sure what the questions mean or who the questions are pointed to. TLCC questions were much easier to understand, and then the data is much easier to access.
It would be good to, I'm sorry. It would be good to have one that staff can give perception survey on administration. Because it sounds like teachers to principals, but there's a loop there too that probably should be looked at as well, I suspect. But
you'd have to call CDE.
I guess the big thing is this is something that's going to entail further conversation and probably some kind of proposal coming down the road as far as what this is going to look like as we move forward with 3 pieces, 2-piece, 1-piece, or alternating. I mean, so I guess that's the next step as a board that we would like to hear is what's this going to look like. This was a good overview of the 3 pieces now. How's it going to look?
And then even the bigger question is, okay, so what? What do you do with all that information, which I know is a sentiment many have. So we've done this, we get the results, and like you said, we've been doing workload committee 4 years. So what? I mean, where is something happening with those results or not? Right?
Well, I think when you give educators the power to own the data and to start coming up, helping their administrators come with the solutions, then it's not, the onus isn't just on the administrator to come up with the solutions. You've got the power of your people behind you.
But I would tell you, that's the fault of the workload committee, and that is everybody that works on that workload committee. It's, we weren't very aggressive and good about coming up with the solutions we have. We should have, and hopefully the data will help us, but we just need to be a little more aggressive about how to take stuff off teachers' plate. And there's lots of blame to share in that committee. There were administrators, there were teachers, there were board members that just, I don't think at the end of the day it made a lot of difference, but it could have, should have.
Well, I've got 5 months left to make a difference, so
we're
going to be making a
up.
difference. I'm ready. We have a meeting next week.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Well, and I think the other thing is, like you said, for OHI or any of these, because we've really tried to make a commitment for kind of transparency times 10, is to really, like you said, if we are publishing the TLCC by building, maybe the OHI ought to be the same as by building, whatever data we have ought to be as transparent as possible. Okay, at this point, we have the expulsion report. We do see a slight increase, and that was in relation to a question that we had earlier by, I know when Paul and I met, we were talking about it. You do see a slight increase in our expulsions for this year over last year. And the majority of those are certainly drug-related, mainly marijuana. And we're really kind of trying to dig into that and say, is it because of the increased availability of marijuana that we're seeing so many more offenses with that? And then certainly some issues with, fighting student aggression, one student to another. So we're really examining that now and saying, should there be some plans of action we're looking at, and in terms of what are the behavior plans we may be doing with students? Are we doing intervention? I think, we'll really be asking the principals to kind of help us examine what's really going on and what are some of our root causes of that increase. Any questions? And the communication report you see provided very nicely, and I think our communication department does a great idea. I love having that information up at our fingertips to know what's going on and what's, so that information is there. And are there any questions?
Communication is just kudos to the group.
Yeah, definitely.
It's prevalent everywhere that you look. It's just, how do you make sure that people see it?
Well, you send out opportunities every day to the media and to staff about things that are going on.
Kudos.
It's always fun to,
Yeah, good job.
Yep.
Really good job.
Like, for instance, today we had our quarterly luncheon at CMU about for recognizing our outstanding honor students, and Emily was right there taking pictures, and so they really are Johnny on the spot, which we really appreciate. So that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, we'll take a quick break, and let's go back and finish up. Thanks for everybody standing. said he said. Okay, we're going to go ahead and reconvene so you guys can get home and catch the sports.
My honor off.
Just a point of information. Since Amy Davis is in Washington, D.C., and it was getting late, she's left the meeting. So when we go ahead with the rest of the meeting, call for a vote. If her name isn't called, we're not ignoring Amy. She's just not with the meeting.
It's 10:30 there.
It's 10:30 at night. Okay, I guess we're ready for the consent agenda. And as we look through the personnel actions, I don't remember seeing any. Did I miss them, or were they in the update?
No, it's in there.
There were some?
There's a few.
Yeah. Okay. Gifts and grants are, if we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items, I-1 personal actions, I-2 gifts, and I-3 grants.
Second. Any conversation regarding any one of those? Call the vote.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Clinton?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Business items, we have J1, we have J1A and J1B, tobacco-free schools and bus scheduling and routing. If I could have a motion to approve those, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on either one of those?
We looked them over.
As I read through them twice, and I didn't see anything that jumped out to me that was. It just means we are cleaning it up and revising it in this policy. So, unless there's any questions, let's go call for a vote.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Clinton?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
J2, Phil, do you want to share the resolution with us?
I take it you mean don't read it word for word?
Yeah, if it's a short resolution, you can. If it's gone with the wind.
You don't have to read it word for word. I can read it.
Thought so. The basics are in consultation with architects and contractors that we need 18 months to build an elementary school, and even that's a fast-track project. If we're going to have this elementary school available in August of 2020, we need to begin right now. We may have as much as 2 months leeway, but that would really put us behind the gun. If we do decide to start now, we will be beating the inflation problem, which is 6 to 10% a year. So we'll end up with a less expensive elementary school. You know, it's one of those decisions where we know we need it. If we don't get it now or in the next year or two, we will need it more and more as every year passes. So the funds are available. If the board is ready and in a position to direct me to begin the process, I can start now. Yes?
Yeah, my two things that's I have concerns with, and it was brought up in one of the long-range planning meetings, is just that I've heard definitive, we'll be ready to start in August of 2020, and I know that was brought up in one of the meetings that, I mean, that's ideal, and we'd love that, but I'd hate to have us rush something and do it not well, as opposed to maybe it's December that we open and it's done right. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think 18 months should be enough to do a good job. It's tough to open a new school mid-year that's not a replacement school.
No, I get that. I'm just saying that caution that we don't railroads ram something through that's not
6
ready.
months for design, 12 months for construction.
So I'd echo Doug's caution, but, I think the most obvious thing in our long-range planning meetings was the need for relief at the elementary school level in Fruita. We have money. We ought to be spending the money to get that school built. If it takes an extra little time or more time to do it right, I would concur, and we would want you to come back. But I don't see any reason not to move forward with getting this design going and getting ground purchased if we have to, or whatever we have to do.
And the second thing I had was, I know the $25 million seems, I'm sure there's some basis behind that number, but again, I don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into an amount that may not be adequate to build the kind of building we want. And if it's 27 million or 22 million, that we have that flexibility, because I've heard a lot in the bond and mill, well, we're sticking by the budget, which is great. That's what we promised we do. But in doing so, in some cases, we haven't done the projects to where they could have been or should have been. And I would hate to see that come to a building that we're going to have for 50 years. Does that make sense?
I agree with that. This is an estimate. We haven't even defined the size of the building yet, or the number of students that we're building to. This was a slightly high estimate.
Okay.
I think that if we will know more as we begin the development phase and design phase, and can identify better how many students we're building for.
Okay.
The long-range planning committee was pretty clear that they liked elementary schools closer to 400 than 600. So this is sort of assuming a 500-kid school.
And I would hope, though, that you do it. I mean, I'd want to follow that recommendation as tightly as we can, but I would also hope that we take into account there's probably not another elementary school that we're going to build out there for a little while. So.
Well, one technique is to build the core for 600 and the classrooms 500, and then if you need to add classroom space, the building can support it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm also assuming, Phil, that if you decide you need $2 million more with the design that's done, or it's going to be $3 million less in your example, you'll let us know, and we'll take the appropriate action, I assume.
Yes, this is a target right now, not a end result, last word you'll ever get. This is just, let's get going and see where we are based on some estimates.
As a board, I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that the growth isn't going to go away in Fruita. We need the building. And we have to be cognizant that every year we wait to make a decision, it adds $2.5 million to the cost of the facility. And that isn't good stewardship of taxpayer dollars. And so I think we need to move ahead with this resolution. And
the most critical first step is to identify the site, because the architects need to design for a specific site.
Did you include a copy of that in this packet?
The resolution is in the packet.
Okay, and then we already discussed that you'll include the cost of staff, the additional staffing that's...
Melanie's looked at that. You want to come on up and...
As far as the property goes, that's, if I remember the memo or something, that you're still in that process of identifying or who wants to sell? Or
we've been working with the city of Fruita to identify a couple of possible sites and the owners, and we've contacted one of the owners already. We're waiting. We haven't quite contacted the other one yet, but we're working that as quickly as we can.
And where are those sites? Where the one that you have? Where's that?
We don't want to be ton specific.
Oh, we can't.
Confidentiality that we ought to hold close.
Okay, but they're the east side of Fruita.
Where the growth is.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
So just some cost considerations for the operating costs that would be ongoing. We're not looking at adding additional students in our district, so in theory it's just shuffling those students among different schools. And so I'm going to give you a range of operating costs. The low end being if we don't end up adding any staff and we're able to kind of shift the existing staff into the new building to staff it. And then the high end being if we do need to staff an additional principal, an additional secretary, kind of the main office core staff would be the additional, and looking to move paras and teachers between the schools. So the range is anywhere from $150,000 to $350,000 per year. That includes the additional square footage that our custodial staff would need to be hired and clean and maintain, additional utilities based on that new square footage, and then nutrition services. And talking to Dan Sharp today, we think that as long as the new buildings are each about 350 students, so all of those elementaries over in Fruita, maintaining that size, that the cost should be pretty neutral.
And that's good to know, because the board in 2020 is going to have to know they're going to incur these ongoing costs to build into the budget.
Right.
And so I think to have it on the radar that this is the realm of possible costs we're going to have to incur at that time.
Right.
It's good to know.
So on the high side, 350 would be kind of a target at this point.
Figure high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Melanie. Thanks.
Yep, of course.
Thanks. Oh, thanks, Phil. Any questions more for Phil?
I move that we adopt, I don't even know what resolution number this is, but it's the resolution, I'm sorry?
J2.
What does that say? Oh, J2, Resolution J2. There's a copy in our packet, and it's to approve and direct the superintendent and chief operations officers to engage architect and general contractor for the purposes of going ahead with a elementary school in the Fruita area of up to $25 million cost.
Second. Anybody?
Well, not up to 25 million.
Of approximately 25 million.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Call a vote.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Pitton?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
The next business item is J3, the approval of the contract for asbestos abatement Orchard Mesa Middle School. And Phil, I'm guessing that's needed if we're going to remove that facility from the site. Is that what that is?
Yes, and it's a direct to the contractor contract. So we thought we should bring that large contract to the board for approval.
And how much is that?
200 and.
And does that fold into the bond project? Or is
Yes, yes, it's within the budget that we have, but it's just a large contract that's standalone.
Okay.
When you get those companies, is
$223,000.
that bidded out with a number of other companies that do this? Is that?
We bid that out, yes. This was a competitive bid.
Eric?
Yeah, this was bid out. We hired an environmental consultant that's working with us on our other asbestos projects, and we split the Orchard Mesa piece off separately, and they did their investigations and wrote a specification. NV5, our owner's rep for Orchard Mesa Middle, did the bid procurement. We pre-qualified 5 abatement contractors, and this was the low bidder of that. They bid alternates for the gym and pool building as well, but this does not include that. This is a classroom building, office building, cafeteria at Orchard Mesa Middle School. But we do have pricing on hold for pending what happens with those other buildings with the city.
I was wondering, does that include that annex?
No.
So it doesn't include the annex, the pool, or the gym?
Correct.
Okay.
But it wasn't.
Demoing the annex?
So I think our plan right now with what we submitted to BEST for our grant was we would either demolish those or turn those over to the ownership of the city. Those were the options. So right now, those funds aren't part of our construction costs for the middle school. And the city is, I think they're pending their election this spring is going to make a decision what to do with those buildings.
I think in our conversations that we had, I think the pool and the gym are pretty solid, depending, of course, on the election. But I don't think there's much interest in the city in the annex. Did you in our conversation?
Well, I'm trying to think back on that. And so, yeah, I think the pool itself, there wasn't they thought they might do something in terms of temperature or something just so they could create different options, but we may already have that in there. That was my first time really becoming a
But the annex,
pool, so.
I don't think the city has much interest.
So we would like to not keep that building if the city doesn't take it. We could really use that space as part of the school grounds. If you look at the site plan as we try and crowd a track onto that site, it would be a really valuable space for the middle school to
I
have
think it's
that
just something
ground.
maybe that, Phil, you're going to have to follow up with the city because at our last meeting, they didn't sound real interested in that annex.
Yeah, I'll go back to my notes, but I don't remember the specifics of that piece.
What, just curiosity, so they're the low bid at 230,000.
Yeah, 239.
What's the range? What was the range of bids? I'd be curious.
Most of the bids the totals I have, Doug, include the pool and the gym and stuff. So to break that out on just that part. So abatement bids don't run a tight 5 or 10% like general contractor. We had one contractor that came in at $1.617 million for the whole site, but they were 3 times what anybody else. So this is a reputable national abatement.
Well, when you said you went with a low bid, and I'm thinking, okay,
right,
well, that's great, but hopefully they do the job right.
I can tell you, we worked very hard on pre-qualifying these vendors. Anybody that had more than 2 violations with our state health department were precluded. Our consultant, we were not just this site, but our other sites where we're doing abatement this summer. We really were specific about the type of contractors we wanted to use. So we feel, based on that input, that this is a competent firm, and I don't think there was any abatement with the 98 building. I think it was an asbestos-free building, but the pool and gym have a little bit in them, so that might be added. But
and that might be something if the well, we'll talk about it later. Should we call for a vote?
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrish?
Yes.
Mr. Pitts?
Yes.
Yes.
The next one would be the resolution of the certification of the mill levy that was presented to us earlier to help the county set the property tax millage. Is that right? I say that okay? Okay.
I move to approve resolution J-4.1 to establish the mill levy.
Second.
Call the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. And I'm not sure it's J1. I think it's J-4 on page 1, and then there's a page 2. So it's resolution J-4.
Okay. Other board discussion? Is there anything else anybody wants to discuss?
More now.
Okay.
Just kind of like a broken record, but thanks to Dr. Serco. Just hear nothing but great things about you're out and about to schools and community things, and I hear this from staff and community people, and so thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your energy.
Future meetings, we see the winter break on there. We have our January 8th board work session, and we have our January 22nd board business meeting. I don't think there are any other future board meetings per se with the whole board. With that, we're going to adjourn to an executive session to discuss the possible purchase of specific and real property under Colorado Revised Statute Section 24-6-402(4)A, and joining that executive session will be John Williams, Paul Pitt, and Tom Parrish, Doug Levinson, Diana Serco, and Phil Onofrio.
Can we add Eddie Mort to that too?
What?
Can we add Eddie Mort?
Eddie Mort would like to join us. He's welcome to join us. Could I have a motion to move?
I move we adjourn to executive session for the purposes of that Tom stated.
A second?
Second.
Call the vote.
Yes.
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 Take your stuff, guys, because sometimes I don't think we're going to be long at all, but I don't want you to try to get back here and find the room's locked and you can't get your stuff.
Thanks, Buck.
Yeah, what's up?
I'm writing about the...
It's always safer to vote.